welcome to another episode of Aileen's Arcane Archive. I'm your pajama archivist, Louise, one half of the Ailene Lynn Ray writing team. And today we're going to go into a little detour for James Bond. Any of you who are James Bond fans out there. Because I have an author friend who has written a series of books where he has taken a James Bond character and put them in a medieval world. And I have to say, I really enjoyed this novel and his series of novels. I think he has the third one coming out. So it's Assassin Royale, King's Dark Blade by Richard Davis. And the neat thing is that he takes a lot of the tropes and the things that you've loved about Ian Fleming's stories and the James Bond movies and those type of things, and put that medieval twist on it, sprinkled them in there. So it's kind of fun to read a really great story, but at the same time, catch all those little clues that he's doing this kind of homage to Ian Fleming and James Bond. So we will look at the back here, and I will read you what the story is all about. Gentleman, lady killer, assassin, spy. Sound familiar? This is great, isn't it? King Ember has a secret weapon. His name is Killian Lord. He's the king's personal assassin. No one is faster with a blade, quicker on a horse, or sharper with a quip. He's the only man in Alba allowed to kill outside the bounds of chivalry, and nobody does it better. In Assassin Royale, trouble brews in the north. Evil King Globe is gathering his forces along the border. An invasion is coming, but where will he strike? Yet King Ember has a bigger problem. Maximilian Durendal, a dark knight in Globe's service, has seized the Berghoff estate, a castle by a mountain lake. He's searching for a powerful magical artifact, the Moonlight Shard. Legend says whoever wields the shard can conquer the world. In the wrong hands, it could destroy Alba. Short on manpower and time, Ember sends for his secret weapon, Killian Lord. Lord's mission is simple, stop Durendal. But there's a problem. Durendal is the greatest swordsman on the continent. No one has ever beaten him. He's obsessed, indomitable, undefeated. Then again, he's never fought Killian Lord. So let's sit back, get my tea, find a comfortable spot. And just like the James Bond movies, where you always see the danger before you see Bond, this story starts out with the danger of what it is that Killian Lord is going to have to investigate and overcome. So we are going to read Chapter 1 of Assassin Royale, King's Dark Blade by Richard Davis, Prelude to a Crime. Tom had never felt happier in his life. Ever since his mother had abandoned him on the steps of the Foundling Hospital, Tom had bounced from one abusive foster home to another, constantly beaten, abused, or neglected by one disreputable character after another. All that changed, however, when he was taken on as an apprentice butler to the Duke and Duchess of Berghoff. The elder masters of the mountain estate were never less than polite and proper, even when scolding him, and Cartwright, the doddering head butler who was now the master of Tom's little universe, never gave him more by way of discipline than a twist of the ear. They were on the terrace now, the three of them, Sir Reginald, Lady Caitlin, and Tom, who at age 10 was now trusted to serve them alone as they breakfasted. The early autumn air was crisp, but the sun was warm, and the aroma of coffee was rich and comforting. Even the silver tray Tom held as he waited upon his masters felt no heavier than a pillow. In the distance, an osprey circled the tarn, then suddenly swooped and snatched a rainbow trout out of the water and flew off. Tom had to struggle to keep a stupid grin of contentment from overtaking his face. It wasn't proper for a servant to wear such an expression. Sir Reginald looked up from the letter he held in arthritic fingers to catch his wife's eye over his reading glasses. According to Cousin Geoffrey, Reginald said, Old Globe is massing troops on the border again, threatening to invade. Oh, that horrible man, said Caitlin. Does he never tire of violence and bloodshed? He's bluffing, Reginald said. Must be. Too late in the year for an invasion, unless, of course, he held some special advantage over Ember, which he does not. And little Nellie, Caitlin asked, how is she getting along with her dancing? Dancing? Reginald huffed, scowling at the pages of the letter. It never ceased to irk him the way Caitlin seemed to be interested only in frivolities. I thought it was singing she was into. No, Reggie, that's Millicent. It's Nellie I was asking about. Reginald said, as if this grunt was some great pearl of wisdom. Perhaps it's time I let you read it for yourself. Oh, Tom, But Tom had already read his master's mind, as a good servant should, and now reached out with a white-gloved hand to take the letter from Duke Berghoff and pass it with a bow to his wife at the other end of the long breakfast table, protected from the high-altitude sun by a pretty green and white awning. Duke Berghoff filled a clay pipe, lit it, and puffed away as his wife devoured the latest gossip from their cousins in Alba, when she was interrupted by a distant but booming knock, knock, knock coming from deep inside the bowels of the chateau. Both husband and wife turned their heads to peer inside the open terrace doors. Tom felt a spider of fear creep down his spine. Silly, perhaps. It was only a knock on the door, but there was something in it that wouldn't take no for an answer. Who on earth could that be? Caitlin would never have admitted it, but she felt a twinge of the same anxiety that bothered little Tom. "You're not expecting anyone, are you, Reggie?" "No, I am not." Moments later, old Cartwright stepped up out on the terrace with a white card on a silver tray. Tom stood up straight, struggling to keep his intense curiosity from showing on his face. As soon as Sir Reginald had scanned the card, he groaned and buried his face in one hand. "Who is it, dear?" Caitlin asked. "What's wrong?" "Durandal," said her husband. "Maximilian Durandal. He's been entreating me to sell him the estate for months." "Sell the estate?" Caitlin said, as if nothing more preposterous could be imagined. "I suppose you'd better let him in, Cartwright." Reginald tossed the card back on the tray with contempt, whereupon the ancient butler wheeled and re-entered the chateau. "Didn't you turn him down?" Caitlin asked. "Of course I turned him down," her husband said, "repeatedly." "Well, all right, Reggie," Caitlin said. "No need to snap at me." Reginald sighed, and it looked as if an argument might spoil the perfect morning when a cry of alarm came from inside the house. Tom felt that little spider of fear redouble its dance along his vertebrae. Caitlin looked up in alarm. Reginald struggled to his feet, but the man who strode out upon the terrace seemed at first glance to be a perfect gentleman. He was a fleshy man, fit enough, but his muscles were covered with a layer of fat typical of a wealthy bachelor's indulgences. He was handsome, as far as it went, but there was something about his perfectly white teeth that gave sign of a predator. As for his attire, it was impeccable. A velvet black doublet over a crisp white shirt, form-fitting hose, and knee-high leather boots polished to within an inch of their life, the whole ensemble capped with a flowing black cape that floated on the mild air from the lake. The dueling rapier he wore at his waist suggested he fancied himself an expert swordsman. "Lord Berghoff, Lady Caitlin," said Durandal, "allow me to—" His greetings were cut off by a shrill scream from the mistress of the house. Following her goggle-eyed stare, Tom saw with a terrified start an enormous orc standing in the door to the terrace. He was 7 feet tall if he was an inch, and so broad with muscle that he nearly blocked the doorway. Green was his complexion, yellow the tusks that protruded from his cracked lips, and gold the ring in his nose, which complemented his gold earrings beautifully. Black leather strained to contain his muscular form, not armor, but not exactly clothing either, and in one hand he held a large valise, nearly bursting at the seams with something bulky. "How dare you, sir?" Reginald said. "How dare you bring an orc into this house?" "Ah, yes," Durandal said, as if only now reminded of the green companion that dogged him. "Terribly sorry, but ever since I saved him from impalement at the hands of his own tribe, Ouglash has followed me everywhere like a loyal hunting hound. I couldn't leave him behind if I wanted to." "Impalement?" Reginald said, squinting at the brute, who stood impassively in the doorway, as if unaware that he was the topic of discussion. "Yes," said Durandal, "you see, he was about to— But I should really withhold the sordid details in the presence of a lady. Please trust me when I say that he's perfectly harmless. He obeys me implicitly." "What, then, is the meaning of this intrusion?" Reginald asked. "But, my dear Berghoff, you already know the meaning of this intrusion, as you call it," Durandal said with a mocking grin. "I intend to buy this estate." "It is not for sale," Reginald said, "as I've informed you in writing many times. This estate, Mr. Durandal, has been in our family for over 300 years. Having gotten over her initial fright at the sight of the orc, Lady Caitlin now rebounded with a courage unique to ladies who have never known a gentleman to violate the laws of chivalry. It has been the seat of this duchy for even longer, a strong and independent duchy that has historically been neutral as between Alba and Galt since the days when these mountains were still mined by dwarves." "Yes, yes," Durandal said with a chuckle. He removed his riding gloves, tugging at each finger one at a time, and tucked them into his sword belt. "But you see, I've taken an interest in this estate, a passionate interest, for I am a passionate man, and my passions will not be denied." And with that, Durandal stared off at the lake, particularly the large and ancient island in the middle, overgrown now with flora and the crumbling remains of an old ruin. "I would invite you to sup with us, Mr. Durandal," said Reginald, "but unfortunately the ride back to Corse is long and hard. You will have to leave without delay if you wish—" "Although I am from Galt," said Durandal, "I am not of Galt. I am certainly no lackey to King Globe. No, my interest in this estate is strictly personal. I did not mean to suggest good, Durandal said. Uglash? The orc strode forward at once, lifting the valise and dropping it on the table, where Durandal indicated with a long, elegant finger. The weight of the bag was such that it made the fine china and silver jump. Tom involuntarily flinched, fearing that the service it was his duty to safeguard might be damaged. Reginald scowled, but before he could object, Durandal snapped open the valise, lifted a gold bullion good delivery bar weighing over 2 pounds, one of many in the bag, and slapped the yellow metal into Reginald's open hand. 500,000 in gold crowns, Durandal said. My last and most generous offer. You will not receive a better price. And I told you, sir, said Reginald, that the estate is not for sale at any price. It grieves me that you've come all this way for nothing, but I must ask you to leave. Damn the gods, sir, Durandal said. For 500,000 in gold you could buy 3 such estates. You could summer in Ariana, winter in Umbria, and keep a place in the Faroe Islands for all the off-seasons. And we've explained to you, Mr. Durandal, said Ailene, that it's not a matter of gold and silver. This is our ancestral home. Our roots here go deep. Our people have lived here for centuries. A long and proud lineage that we treasure more than gold, even if such notions seem quaint in this day and age. I see, said Durandal. He made a fist, held it to his lips, and paced the terrace, his brow furrowed. An observer could have been forgiven for thinking the matter on the brink of resolution, but Tom felt more afraid than ever. Durandal suddenly came to a halt and eyed the Duke of Berghoff. Tell me, sir, Durandal said, do you consider yourself a great soul? Excuse me, Reginald said, a half-smile on his face, as if taking Durandal's question as some kind of frivolity. Lady Ailene mentioned a long, proud heritage, Durandal said. Does this not make both of you great souls, if that expression has any meaning? Mr. Durandal, said Reginald, if you meant to suggest that we decline your offer out of snobbery, very well, said Durandal. Since you will not take my gold, I will offer you something perhaps of far greater value. An opportunity. To take part in a cause and a quest greater than yourselves. Nay, more than that, a chance to both witness and alter history. Uglash? At a nod from Durandal, the orc strode forward and grabbed Reginald by one arm. When the Duke rose his other to defend himself, Uglash batted him across the face so hard that the elderly man fell to the stone tiles of the terrace, already bleeding from one corner of his mouth. Lady Ailene screamed and rushed to her husband's side, but Durandal himself grabbed her by the wrist, spun her around, and held her captive, as Uglash waited to see if her husband had any more fight left in him. Tom heard an earth-shattering crash and realized that he had dropped his silver tray. Out of sheer love for his master, Tom ran up to him and stared in his eyes, a silent question in his own. How can I help? For an instant, the old man's eyes peered out from the crow's feet and bags of sagging skin in which they were buried and met the boy's dead on. Run, Tom, said Reginald. Run and hide. It was a command, not a suggestion, and his master knew best. Tom turned and dashed through the terrace doors and into the great hall. You there, boy! Tom heard Durandal call after him, in the same tone of voice he'd heard in a dozen abusers' voices. Come back here! Tom stopped and heard Lady Ailene scream again as his eyes adapted to the gloomy interior of the castle. A pair of men in black, vassals of Durandal, no doubt, stood by the keep's front door as if guarding it, barring exit or entry. The boy! Durandal cried from outside. Grab him! He mustn't escape! The two hoodlums uncrossed their arms and advanced on Tom, even as he stood before them, paralyzed by fear. Doddering old Cartwright appeared from out of nowhere and reached out as if to stop one of the men, but the head butler was shoved out of the way, as if he was no more substantial than a cobweb. Cartwright tripped and fell, hitting his head on the black and white parquet floor that matched his butler's uniform, and suddenly lay still, blood spilling from his cracked skull like crimson cream. The blood was what did it. Tom snapped out of his terror-induced trance. He turned and dashed up the main staircase, 2 steps at a time, his heart beat throbbing in his ears, his lungs gulping air. He could hear his pursuers behind him, feet pounding against the floor. Any second he felt sure that their hands would close on his shoulder like the bony metacarpals of an undead skeleton, seizing him, condemning him to whatever horrific fate Durandal intended for them all. Tom had one advantage. He knew the castle inside and out, having explored every inch of the old pile when not on duty. He knew exactly where to hide, where he could feel safe even in the midst of this insane fever dream that was somehow real. Deep in the servants' quarters on the 3rd floor was an old dumbwaiter that had fallen into disuse as the house had grown up around it. It was now hidden behind a wardrobe in one of the maids' rooms. Tom had found it, pried loose the back of the wardrobe, and hidden inside it late at night, when the nightmares of past abuse had haunted him. In the tiny secret space he could feel safe and untouchable, where nothing evil could find him. His heart booming in his ears, a stitch stabbing his side, Tom found the wardrobe now, clambered inside, and crawled into the dumbwaiter, replacing the loose backing of the wardrobe behind him, and sliding down the dumbwaiter's flexible door for extra security. He sat scrunched in a ball, his knees to his chin, fighting to calm his heartbeat and breathing, which sounded so loud in his ears that he imagined they might give him away. All too soon he heard the footfalls of the henchmen as they entered the maid's room and started to search for him. Their muffled voices penetrated all the way through to the dumbwaiter. "He came this way, I'm sure of it. Where is he, then? Where are you, little bastard?" After a while the wardrobe creaked as somebody opened it. Clothes rustled as they were pushed from one side to the other, wire coat hangers scraping unpleasantly across the bar. "Not in here," a voice finally declared. Tom could have sobbed with relief, but he didn't dare make a sound. And yet the boy's ordeal was far from over. He continued to hear sounds and commotion as Durandal's men took over the chateau for some dark purpose known only to their dark lord. Tom heard shouts and cries as the servants were subdued and dealt with. What was even more disturbing, he heard grunts and crashes and thuds coming from the great tower, as if Durandal's vassals were moving some kind of heavy equipment or machinery up there. A lot of it. The process took all day and lasted into the night. At one point Tom heard a sob that could have only come from Lady Caitlin, and a groan that sounded like Sir Reginald himself. So they weren't dead, at least not yet. At some point, his bladder bursting, Tom crept out of his hiding place long enough to relieve himself in a chamber pot. Shortly thereafter, more thugs came in to search the room again, looking again for the little bastard as they so kindly referred to him. Through it all, the one constant was the short, sharp sound of Durandal's voice, tirelessly issuing orders and making demands. It reminded Tom of the sort of snare drum that soldiers played when on the march. He didn't even want to think about what Durandal would do to him if he were found. Night came. Tom could only tell by the dip in temperature and the sounds that came with night, blind as he was in the dark of the dumbwaiter. The center of activity shifted now to the top floor of the great tower, where it seemed Durandal and several of his men had taken up residence. The sounds they made echoed down the spiral stone stairs, and Tom wondered time and again if it would be safe to emerge from hiding at last and make his way to a monastery he knew on the far side of the lake, the least worst of the foster homes he'd known. At one point he went to open the wardrobe door when suddenly the sound of activity picked up again, and he stayed put, straining to hear some kind of sense in the various noises. Lady Caitlin began to cry and beg, pleading for her husband's life, only to be ignored, it seemed, until Durandal irritably demanded her silence. A loud slap made her dissolve into tears. Then the strangest thing happened. Tom had never witnessed the like of it in all his life. First there was a low hum, nothing human or even animal, but mechanical and unnaturally even. It rose in pitch and volume until it was deafening, and Tom covered his ears, but in vain, as the noise seemed to penetrate and permeate everywhere. Then an eerie blue-green light began to glow, even in the pitch dark of Tom's dumbwaiter, which was inexplicable, but there it was. The light grew in brightness and intensity until Tom could bear it no more. He removed his fingers from his ears and clapped his hands over his eyes, but it was no use. The eerie blue-green light penetrated first his fingers and then his eyelids, until at last he could see the bones inside his hands as dark blue-green shadows beneath bright blue-green flesh. Tom screamed, "The danger be damned!" He opened the dumbwaiter by feel, pried loose the board, and burst out of the wardrobe. The light had faded as suddenly as it had grown, and Tom could see again with his dark, adapted eyes, though the world was colored still by a blue-green afterglow. He fled, dashing down the stairs, racing across the courtyard, alive with the sound of spooked livestock, and pounding down the ramp to the outer bailey. He cleared the castle and ran through the town and kept on running. He did not once look back. Chapter 1 of Assassin Royale by Richard Davis. So if you liked what you heard, we will have links and information about Richard Davis and his books in the end of this video and in the details of the video. So I encourage you that if you like this, to go out and find a copy of your own. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen about independent authors. And I'd like you to remember that your life is a story, so go out and live it.